All right, I'm joined now by Joe Everett of NFL Draft Bible for our NFL Weekend Review and Monday Night Preview for Week 15. Joe, how's it going today, man?
Not bad. Kind of a rough weekend. Got beat up a little bit in my bowl games, 50-50 in the NFL, so it's time to get back on the grind, turn the page on a new week, man.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about in college football, it's a very interesting Saturday when it comes to the bowl games, and we'll look ahead to the rest of the bowl games here later on in today's show. But, Joe, let's chat some NFL here, and we'll go ahead and start off with the Monday Night Football preview for the Falcons and Buccaneers game here tonight. Atlanta still a 6.5-point favorite across most of the marketplace. Bovada and MyBookie showing touchdowns out there with some extra juice on the dog. And, Joe, I mean, this is a pretty cut and dry handicap here. You've got a team with a lot of playoff implications on the line against a team with nothing to play for but pride.
Yeah, and really just a banged-up Bucs team on defense, especially in the two heavies, Gerald McCoy and Levante David. I mean, those are not just great players, but veterans, leaders in the locker room. Say what you want about Vernon Hargraves, who's also out. McCoy is the real loss there with his toe, setting the tone up front. They just don't have another player like that. No offense, Chris Baker and Clinton McDonald, questionable here too. So where their whole tackle position is, still got Quan Alexander. I think Justin Evans, their safety, has really been kind of a revelation for them, the kid out of Texas A&M. So, but outside of that, it's just going to be tough. High-flying act for Atlanta. Sure, Julio Jones easily the best player in this game. But I think Mohamed Sanu, just playing his tail off this year, noticeably bigger physically. He's quicker than I've seen him. And we've all known about his all-purpose game. I mean, he could throw it, he could kick it. He's a very legitimate kicker, actually. So they just kind of a really great player to watch in that game. And then I think Tevin Coleman's out. So it's going to be a lot more Devontae Freeman, but I don't think that's as much of a knock. I mean, Coleman's a great deep threat. He's got that long, deep speed, but Freeman and that vision, setting up his blockers, he's a gifted receiver. I have a tough time imagining the Bucs are keeping pace with this on offense. I mean, sure, there will be a lot of Mike Evans, but where Winston is, you mentioned where their heads are at. I'm sure they'll be fired up to play on prime time, but just how long that lasts and for what. The one thing I will point out, that I think I always love hidden revenge games, nicknaming, well, this is the Adrian Claiborne Bowl in my books because this is the team that drafted him, and he is on a big incentive train here. Claiborne gets $1.25 million incentive if he gets one more sack this season. The Bucs, I think they gave up 10 sacks last two games combined, so there's a very good chance tonight on prime time Claiborne's going to get a huge payday just off of one more play that it could happen against Winston and the team that decided, hey, we're not going to give you that fifth-year option. We're not going to sign you that second deal. And, he's now a journeyman officially, so it'd be kind of neat to see if Claiborne could seal that deal up. But, yeah, this is really, if I'm watching two players, it's a nice game to say, hey, Mike Evans, it's been a horrible season. Show me what you've got. And then on the other side, watch one of the best players flat out in the game in Julio. So at least there's a bit of a show there. But, yeah, how to play this, I don't know. I mean, it's just so fishy. Like they're just asking you to take Atlanta is my general feel here. And if I'm taking Atlanta, I guess I'd go like first half because so many first half teams out there, the Colts, the Browns, the Falcons, those are three of the biggest ones that stick out to me. And yeah, if I'm betting anything Falcons, it's definitely going to be first half and not full game. They're pretty risky full game against anybody, and they've proved that week in and week out in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of ways to play this game. One would be Atlanta in the first half. The other would be, and I'm not advocating this, but I think this is going to be something very popular out there, where we see a lot of Atlanta teasers down to a pick'em or minus half a point, and then people teasing the over down into the 42 type of range. I think that's going to be the most popular public play here tonight. So I think the books will be exposed a little bit on the Atlanta side from teasers, and maybe you get some -6.5 parlays crossing over to the NBA because it's a big NBA card here tonight. But, the problem with the second half for Atlanta here is that they play the Saints next week on a short week here, and then they play Carolina the following week. So for Atlanta, obviously they need to take care of business in this spot and keep themselves in a decent position for the playoffs at 9-5. But they've got those two really huge games next week. You've got the Saints right back again after you knocked them off last week on Thursday Night Football. Carolina, that's a revenge game for you because you lost in Charlotte earlier on this year. So that's really the question that I have here for Atlanta is, are they motivated to go out there and win by a touchdown on the road? Because they very well should. You mentioned the injury problems for Tampa Bay, one at each level of that defense with McCoy, Levante David, and then Vernon Hargreaves. Also, one of the things that I think is kind of an interesting discussion here this late in the season is you've got a guy like Brent Grimes who, probably not going to stay with Tampa Bay. Doesn't seem like he's all that happy with the situation there. And, of course, Tampa Bay, could very well have new coaches, at least new coordinators going into next season. So you've got these guys that are playing for jobs. And, how much of a motivating factor is that on an individual level? How much does that actually help out the team? Over the next 3 weeks, or over the next 2 weeks, I should say, in the NFL, you're going to have those individual players on these defensive and offensive units for teams that aren't going anywhere. But how much of a tangible impact does it make? I don't really know.
Well, I think it does a little bit. Like you mentioned Grimes there. I totally agree. New regime likely next season. He's putting together audition tape. And if he wants good footage out there for teams to look at recently, it'd be against one of the baddest hombres out there. So, yeah, I'd expect a good game out of Grimes. And it's tough for him because he has to basically prove it every single season with his injury history, with his age. So, yeah, that is definitely something to think about. And let's not discount that. She's another hard case by herself. But I think that's why I'm still kind of thinking about a total. You mentioned those games ahead that they may be concerned with. They probably want to build an early lead, run that ball, shorten this game up, milk that clock out, and I don't know how many points we're going to see scored here is another concern, I think.
Yeah, and again, you kind of get a lot of times in all of the professional leagues, you get the copycat theory where, teams see something happening, they try to replicate it, or if teams see something they don't like, they're going to err on the side of caution. And for Atlanta here, if you can build a first half lead and then bubble wrap Julio Jones in the second half of this game, you better be damn sure they're going to try to do that. Because after seeing what happened to Antonio Brown last night, it's football. There's a possibility of it happening. But if you can put yourself in a position to protect some of those star players, you can hand the ball off 80% of the time here in the second half, maybe 85%, keep Matty Ryan upright, get Julio Jones off the field, or just use him as a decoy or something like that. If you can put yourself in that position, you really want to do that. So I do think if you want to play this game, Atlanta first half would be the way to go. Maybe if Atlanta jumps out 14-0, 17-0, 21-0, something like that, maybe you live bet Tampa Bay expecting Atlanta to put it in cruise control in the second half. Then you got to hope that Tampa Bay doesn't quit on you. But I think with a guy like Jameis Winston, his ability to put up numbers, I think Tampa Bay probably hangs around. So I think there are some opportunities here in this game. But, of course, just because it's a standalone NFL game doesn't mean you have to bet it.
Exactly. I've fell into that trap plenty of times myself.
All right, well, let's stay in the NFC South here, and let's transition over to our Week 15 recap a little bit. Let's talk the Carolina Panthers. So the Carolina Panthers win 31-24, cover against the Green Bay Packers, who did have Aaron Rodgers back, but Aaron Rodgers just didn't look quite himself. 26 of 45 for 290, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks in this one. But Cam Newton with a big game and, 4 yards per carry for Carolina, crossed 150 yards there. Greg Olsen looked excellent in this game for them. You're buying some Panthers stock, Joe.
Well, definitely, and I'm certainly not stepping in their way anymore. This team, I don't know if they're banding together in this aftermath of the ownership and all that. And I'm not saying they're getting together, let's play one for Jerry kind of thing by any means. I just think similar to what we talked about, you change owners, management starts changing, new coaches arrive, new faces all around the facility, and then all of a sudden they make even more changes. So I think there's a lot of people in that building in general that in that Panthers whole crew that might not be here this same time next year. So that's something that's got to be sticking in the back of their heads. It's like, hey, Sally that works in the parking lot, man, let's do it for Jim. It's security, late night shift. He's the bomb. Like that still plays into it. These are human beings. So I think, there's some sort of sense of urgency is like, hey, we're here now. We're here to do this. So that's a team. I think there's also that little motivational angle, but on the field, just the way they use McCaffrey was exactly how I thought we'd see it coming into the season. That was just a showcase game for him to start out, how they got him in space. They just put his speed into that linebacking core, into that corner group, and Devin Funchess, too. He's developed into a matchup nightmare, and I was wrong about that kid. I never thought he'd be this good. He's just really out there making some grown man plays. But the difference is that, like we've talked about, I think to stress in the NFL, there's just certain guys that affect that point spread. And Kuechly, like he's just running that defense. And Sean McDermott may have gotten this fancy coaching job in Buffalo, and maybe Steve Wilkes, their defense coordinator now, gets promoted, but they're running Luke's defense, and he's dialing it up on the field. And when he's healthy, this is one of the best NFL front sevens out there. Lutulule, Short, even Julius Pepper's still getting it done. The old man and Addison. They're tough to run on. They've got a really strong pass rush up the middle, and then just the ultimate team deodorant is still Cam Newton. That rushing threat, the passing he's able to do, it's just. You don't find that in the quarterback position. We've seen quarterbacks this tall. We've seen quarterbacks this fast, but not the whole package, not this thick. It's just they're just going to be tough out the rest of the way. And in the postseason, I think everyone talked about, and so did I may have been wrong there as well, but the Chargers are the team no one wants to face in the playoff. No, I think it's the Panthers, because how the heck do you defend Newton with some of those things? Like, not even this week, but last week, that freaking Euro step he puts in the open field and then just burns him for a 50-yard. I don't know what defense you're coming up for this guy. So that's, I'm done betting against Panthers. I paid the price this last week, Adam. I was all over the Packers, and I was all over some tissues and some tears after Cam Newton did it again.
Well, and when Cam Newton has at least 8 carries this season, the Panthers are 6-2. And that's something that we talked about early on in the year, is that, in the first 3-4 weeks of the season, they really didn't let him run around too much. He started running around in week 4 there in that New England game. They won 33-30, and quite honestly, I think that was the game that really changed their season around. Instead of being 2-2, they went to 3-1, and then they, started getting Cam healthy, and they looked at this thing and said, okay, we're back. We can make a good run at the playoffs, and now they find themselves here at 10-4. So you have to let Cam be Cam, and certainly it's understandable that the Panthers put some kid gloves on him early on in the year, coming back from the shoulder injury, and he honestly didn't look all that comfortable being out there either. But you have to let him extend plays. You have to let him do what he does with his legs. 14 carries, a season high in that game there against Green Bay, and they almost needed every one of them because he had over 4 yards per carry up until I think it was maybe week 13 or so. Both Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Stewart were under 4 yards per carry. So this was a team that needed to manufacture yards on the ground. You start turning to Cam Newton to do that, it accelerates your offense. It accentuates your offense so much to have a guy like that can avoid the rush, especially in today's NFL, where it's really all about speed rushers on the edge. You get the physical corners that can play one-on-one. You get the safety help over the top. If Cam Newton can run around, freeze those linebackers, make that safety pay attention, that's when you get the Greg Olsen mismatches. And that's what we got in this game. Olsen targeted 12 times, 9 grabs, buck 16 and a touchdown. That's when the Panthers are at their best. And we'll see what happens next week. We'll see if Thomas Davis is suspended, and quite frankly, he should be. But, this Carolina team, like you said, you don't want to run into them in the playoffs.
No, and I don't think Greg Olsen's been that wide open in his entire career of balling. I've never seen no one around Greg Olsen in the end zone. That's just ridiculous. And I think it is Cam that taking a while after that shoulder injury and missing all the offseason was the real culprit of that slow start. And, you nailed it, man. That New England game, I think just was the spark that started that fire. And right now, do not get close to this Panthers team because they'll burn you.
All right, well, let's talk about the Sunday night football game here. I know you want to talk specifically about Derek Carr and the big turnover that he had in this game. But, in looking at the NFC playoff picture here, I mean, Dallas, obviously they needed that game last night. They found a way to get it done, and credit to them for that. Three-way tie at 8-6 there. They're just below the cut line right now with Atlanta up there at 8-5, and Atlanta, of course, favored here tonight to move to 9-5. So Dallas is, well on the outside looking in, but as we know, anything can happen here over the last couple of weeks. But ugly football game last night. You had a lot of blown coverages that led to some chunk plays in the passing game. You had some ugly turnovers from the quarterbacks. Neither team, overly effective running the football. I mean, Derek Carr had to do the bulk of the work there for the Oakland running game. Just not a great football game overall, but Dallas did find a way to pull it out.
Yeah, and just not a good look for the league's rules. I mean, I think some of the couple of the dumbest rules really shined yesterday, and not just the Jesse James catch, leave that out. Derek Carr, I like the effort running high speed with the one-handed dive in there. I think it's just I wouldn't do it with the hand that I had the glove on. I think there's the real error in his judgment there, but the rule. Not to get on a soapbox, but they got to change that. I mean, completely losing possession, turnover, and the other team even gets the ball. I think you should still retain possession, but sure, get penalized because you've made a bit of a blunder there at the goal line. So but be that as it may, yeah, it's really a bad look, I think, by both teams on defense, and I've credited Sean Lee for being very similar to Kuechly. It's just a different Cowboys defense out there, but wow, he got outran by a couple of Raiders, even just by Dave Carr, who's also got a bad back and is playing hurt, and yeah, Sean Lee just couldn't even catch him. That's I think teams they're going to find ways, and sure, he's playing on a bum hamstring, but yeah, it was a bad look for the Cowboys defense and just the Raiders. It's so sad. Why didn't you show up against Kansas City? I mean, of all the times, now you show up and it's still not even going to save your cause. So, yeah, frustrating Raiders team to watch, but even more so, I think that Cowboys, it's even if they make it to the postseason, there's still a whole lot of holes, and those young corners, that's going to be a problem for Dallas going forward. So, yeah, I'm glad they got Ezekiel Elliott back, and I may yet back Cowboys again, but man, those were two bad teams, and in a league that's supposed to be all about flexing games. I just don't understand how that game's not flexed out.
Well, I guess a lot of it is just because Dallas is that big ratings draw. But, for Dallas here, losing Tyron Smith once again in this game, a guy that just hasn't been healthy for the better part of 3 months here, a significant loss for them as the Seahawks come to town on Sunday. But, of course, Seattle and all their defensive injuries, it may not necessarily matter for Dallas. But, just this game, so many, instances where you had huge momentum swings. You mentioned the Carr fumble, obviously, that's very significant. We've seen far too many of those here in the NFL this year, fumbling out of the end zone, and I don't know why the ball goes to the other team. Give it back to the offense, but give it to them on the 25 or something like that. Then you had Jared Cook called for pass interference on what didn't really look like a penalty. Oakland winds up missing that field goal at the end of the first half after the touchdown's taken off the board. Just so many things about this game that just weren't good football. And, it's just one of the, we've come to expect that from the Raiders this year. The Raiders are just finding ways not to win games. The offense just doesn't look very good. I mean, when Derek Carr's got 171 yards on 38 attempts, something's wrong there in Oakland. So we'll see what they do here going forward into the offseason. But speaking of rules and things that don't tend to make a whole lot of sense, now I will say, I played New England-Pittsburgh under 55.5 live once Antonio Brown went out. The number adjusted down a point. The Steelers settled for a field goal, and the number went from 56.5 to 55.5. So, again, that we talk about the math formula and the algorithm that goes into live betting. That number did not take into account at all whatsoever that Antonio Brown had just gone out. So, of course, I kind of won by the seat of my pants there on that one. But still, it's one of those examples of, why live betting can be such a very good thing for you. That was a touchdown by Jesse James. I mean, it is what it is. And people saying it was a touchdown in high school or college are wrong because he touched at the 1, hadn't crossed the goal line yet. It would have been Pittsburgh ball at the 1 in high school or college, probably. But, Joe, it's December 18th, 2017, and I guess we can go back to yesterday, December 17th, 2017. It's almost 2018. We still don't know what a catch is in the NFL. How the hell is this possible?
I don't understand. This is another one where, I guess they're following the verbiage of the rules or trying to be by the book, but they've got to change that. And just the definition of what it is what it means to break the plane, and then how it applies to a catch as opposed to the difference to a runner. That's I think if someone has possession, makes a football move, and breaks that plane, that's got to be a score. And to put it in perspective too, Adam, as soon as Brown went out, I live bet the Pats. That's just the instinct took over at that point. I couldn't even stop myself. I got off on that just by the hair of my chins. The call worked out for me, but I don't agree with it. And I mean, you got to teach your receiver. The sad part is James catches it and maybe just rolls over a bit. It might still be a touchdown, but they've got to do something about it. And I guess the real takeaway, boy, that Pats defense letting Juju Smith-Schuster go for that deep catch and run, that by itself, and just period, how the Steelers kind of handled the Pats, not schematically, but just strategically. Boy, did they kill that clock. I mean, they just ate it and kept the ball out of Brady's hands. So I kind of like that going into their next matchup, if and when they play. Got to think they do. So, but still, this thing should have turned out a Steelers win. And, I would hope they really look into that because, like you said, I'm just not sure what's a catch and what is a touchdown specifically. And I feel kind of bad for Jesse James because, it's not really his fault. I mean, he sees the goal line. Once I said instinct took over, that's exactly what happened to Jesse. I could just end the game here, and I think you got to call that touchdown. And but furthermore, Christ, Pat's defense. I mean, they couldn't cover a screen. They couldn't get any penetration. I don't know what they're doing. That rocket scientist with the pencil in his ear, even though he has a laminate play sheet, don't know what he's using that pencil for, don't know what he's dialing up, and dropping defensive ends in coverage. It just, that guy really, Patricia, he makes me scratch my head every time I watch the Patriots play. I'll really be interested to see if he actually gets that promotion, that defensive coordinator turned into coach, because that'd be a team I'd fade. I do not believe in him as a real football mind. I think he's just running Belichick's defense, doing as told, and showing up to the facility on time, not rippling any waves, and it's been all good. I mean, it's got to be good work of being a Patriots assistant. But that defense, boy, rough look for the Pats there. If Roethlisberger without Antonio Brown does that, what are the other teams going to figure out here? I think it's one of the worst Patriots defenses I've seen.
Speaking of defensive coaches not knowing what's going on, I saw Danny Shelton drop back in coverage for the Browns yesterday. So that'll give you some idea of what Craig Williams is doing with that team. This Patriots Steelers game, it was fascinating, and it was a pretty good game overall. I mean, Antonio Brown being out obviously changed the dynamic of this game, and Pittsburgh probably does win this game if Antonio Brown doesn't go out, and obviously Pittsburgh wins this game if the rules aren't written the way that they are in the NFL, and that's the problem, is that it wasn't a catch by NFL standards, but it's the rule that sucks. It's not the player not maintaining possession all the way to the ground. It's just the rule that's bad. But then, as I'm watching this game, man, Pittsburgh had no answer for Rob Gronkowski. And I know that it's hard to have an answer for Rob Gronkowski, but the move that he put on the corner, and I can't remember who it was, on that 2-point play, tight ends aren't supposed to do that shit. And he just worked that dude. I'm like, and Romo, of course, called out the play, fade down the bottom of Gronkowski, and he's wide open by 2 steps on a fade route on a 2-point conversion. I'm like, how that's ridiculous. You're a tight end, dude. that was high-level football, and, I hope that we do see that game again in the playoffs.
I don't know which safety it was, but I don't know why he waited to cheat over so late. He's playing the single high. Do what you want. It's your defense, but still, he's got to be cheated over to the Gronkowski's side. But instead, like right at the snap, he then gets the running start and goes over even too shallow. I don't understand. Like, you've got to get a high-low on him. So, the safety's got to go high, and then the corner needed to go low, and I think that's kind of that's why that corner was so out of position. He just was counting on the safety, I think, to be back, and, boy, yeah, that's if you don't have your act together, that's a tough man to cover.
All right, let's talk about your boy Jimmy G here, and I got a chance to watch the end of that one as well once that Patriots-Steelers game went off. And first of all, props to Ryan Suckup and Robbie Gould for absolutely hammering the 2 field goals that they made there late in that game. But Jimmy Garoppolo throws for 381 on this pretty porous Titans secondary, but marches his team right on down the field for that game-winning kick. This kid's growing up right away. Him and Kyle Shanahan have a great rapport already. Man, this is an interesting-looking thing if they get some wide receiver talent out there.
I think the world's starting to know about Jimmy G being for real. I think he's amazing, but sure, 3 bad defenses he's played, and, I don't think it matters just watching the guy throw, what he's getting these other players to think and believe. You start believing he can turn water into wine after some of these throws. He's just got that kind of presence. He's a threat as a runner, and just how he moves under pressure. He alters the throwing platform, and he can spin it, but I just think the accuracy from throwing set, throwing in motion, it's the same. The footwork, as I mentioned before, like they've really polished this kid up in New England. I do not remember him looking like this out of Eastern Illinois. I mean, he looked sharp, but the release is just a quick snap, compact movement, and it's just kid's a joy to watch. I'm just sad that the secret's out. Like, I think a lot of people are going to be coming into next season with big expectations, and we'll see. The real test is this week. Sure, they were favored over an 8-5 team, and he made some magic against Tennessee's defense. We'll see what happens against Jacksonville. So maybe reality's about to set in, but I would still remind people, even if he looks rough against the Jags, that's fine. A lot of quarterbacks have looked real rough against the Jaguars. That same Ben Roethlisberger we watched last night, 5 interceptions? So, I would caution people not only to keep the Jacksonville game a little bit in perspective, but also get your popcorn ready. I mean, this is both sides here are, I think, kind of amped up for this. Jacksonville, they're no dummies. They've got their ear to the ground. They're hearing all the hype around Garoppolo, so I'm sure they'll be ready to kind of kid and say, hey, you know what, we didn't think all that of him. Or, I think on the other side, too, Garoppolo knows this is the best defense he's going to face. So, that's what I'm looking for next week. And just I don't think I have to say it, but I'll take the 49ers at what other plus points I get in that game and be happy to have it. I'm just short of getting a Garoppolo fat head. I will not wear a 49ers jersey ever. That will never happen. But, boy, I'm going to have to, I don't know how to maybe custom make my own T-shirt to his likeness and wear that around because I got a true bromance working for Jimmy G.
So here's a question for you. I mean, Marquise Goodwin looks, pretty good. They've got Trent Taylor there who, could be a wide receiver 3, something like that. This is not a great wide receiver class in the NFL draft. So they probably won't go that route with their high pick in the first round. But later on in the draft, I mean, who would be some wide receivers that would fit this scheme that, because we know Kyle Shanahan, listeners on the show already know what you and I think of him and his play design and his concepts and his ability to get guys open. Who fits? Who is, the perfect guy to plug in here with this Shanahan-Garoppolo offense?
Well, Pierre Garçon. I believe he's going to be coming back, and they definitely like what they have in Goodwin, but I don't know, as far as a receiver, like in this draft class, I don't know that there's anybody wheels set, rolling, hit the ground running types. I do believe Calvin Ridley's probably your closest best bet for instant coffee. I mean, the kid showed up as a freshman ready to run, but he'd be kind of maybe a little bit of a costly pick there. But that's the type, he's done now 2 different schemes. His experience in Lane Kiffin's system, I think, would be valuable. But honestly, if they really wanted to go with a home run type hitter, it'd be the A&M kid, Kirk. I really like Christian Kirk. I mean, he's from Arizona area originally, so I'm not sure how he got out of the state. Credit to Kevin Sumlin's recruiting, but that guy is just, kind of like an Alvin Kamara or a Tyreek Hill in the perspective that just give him about 5 or 8 touches, and man, you could have a couple of touchdowns just on those single opportunities he was given. So yeah, I'd like to see them with a nice speed option to, kind of take advantage of Garoppolo's deep ball. And yeah, if you're looking for speed options, guys that can get that clean release, I really like Christian Kirk a lot for that fit, because you just want someone who could make that instant impact. And yeah, that's where Kirk, he's not super smart and polished up in his routes, but raw athletic ability, boy, he can get up and go.
All right, let's look at the other side of this game here real quickly. I know this isn't a talking point that you sent over, but it's something I saw as I was looking at this game here. So the Tennessee Titans, Rashard Matthews came out after the game. Tennessee did a little bit more no-huddle, did some more improvising, kind of the Marcus Mariota offensive scheme from Oregon, where he kind of had a little bit more free reign to adjust things based on what he saw. So the Titans had a little bit of success going no-huddle in yesterday's game. Rashard Matthews, not mincing words here at all. I'd rather have Marcus calling the shots, he said. There's proof in the success when that happens. I'd like to do no-huddle more. I know we'd all like to do it more. We definitely talk about it a lot. So this really isn't a vote of confidence, I don't think, for this Tennessee Titans coaching staff, especially the offensive staff. And we kind of talked about that a little bit. I think it was on last week's show or maybe 2 weeks ago, where you're not really maximizing what Marcus Mariota does well. I mean, if you're going to invest in this franchise-type quarterback, you don't try to make them deviate too much. If you want to go get that guy, you do what's best for him. You play to his strengths and transition that over to the NFL side of things. If that doesn't work, then you make that call a little bit down the line. But here, we talked about Mariota and kind of that lack of development. Also the same thing with Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay. But to see Rashard Matthews come out and just be very blunt and very honest and very upfront here about the fact that the players think that Mariota should have more say in the offense. The players want Mariota to have more say in the offense. I kind of wonder what that means going forward.
And the guy we've criticized on this show, Terry Robisky, I think that's a shot across the bow, if not anything. And really, I kind of agree what we were just talking about with Cam Newton and his ability to freelance, but also pre-snap and just, I don't care what the play was called in. There's some plays, Cam just decides, yep, this is a designed run. Okay, guys, in the huddle. Yes, this is what was called, but power left, Newton go. That's the new play. And I think that's kind of where Matthews has got to be coming from, to where this game is matchups. It's quick decisions. And if they're going in the no-huddle, then that's where Mariota can kind of just, I don't want to, not to sound too corny, but draw plays up in the dirt and say, actually, this is what I'm seeing from the coverage, and then communicating with the receivers. It's like, no, he's off of me. We could really make this look like a run and then get these RPOs going, and that is supposed to be the magic of Mariota if there is any left in that hat. So, yeah, I think that it makes a lot of sense, Matthews, and boy, that is really the coaching staff has gotten thrown under the bus with that comment, and I think I don't have a problem with it, because like you said, that if it wasn't last show, the show before, the Titans have got issues. There's too much talent here on this offense to not see a lot more points than what's being put up on the board.
One more game or one more player to talk about here. We want to look at the Los Angeles Rams, and they blew out Seattle. And this is a spot where the Rams, as we talked about last week on the show, they outplayed Seattle the first time these two teams played, but they were -5 in turnover margin, hard to overcome that in any league, let alone the NFL. So they just go out there and beat up Seattle. They led this game 34-0 at halftime, put the bubble wrap on Todd Gurley in the second half, as well they should. People are going to look at this game, Joe, and probably say, well, the Seahawks are missing X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and D all on defense. Well, I think the Rams are just a pretty damn good team, and this game illustrated it right from the jump.
Yeah, and there's no doubt the defense and really that marriage we've spoken about between McVay scheming it up and then on the other side of the ball, I'm going to go sit on my Gatorade cooler. Wade, why don't you hold the fort down until I get back? And, yeah, Phillips has just he does an excellent job wherever he goes. But I'm just amazed how it doesn't matter where they are. The Rams win on the road, and that's a sign of great teams. But really what's making it all happen, what you call the straw that stirs the drink here is Gurley. He looks just like he did as a sophomore or even the junior year right before the injury at Georgia. It's just the confidence he's running with, the power. Sure, the offensive line's playing well, and it's all a marriage of everything with Goff playing just nothing like that guy we saw last year. So that's been a difference too, but it's just the ultimate weapon Gurley is. Receiver, it doesn't matter if it's short yardage, long yardage. It's just, if the Rams do go all the way in this conference like they could, the reason's going to be Gurley. And, I think he's making a case for the MVP. It just, you don't even have to talk about his numbers, but they're phenomenal. I mean, there's like 2 games of this entire season where he's been held for under 100 all-purpose. So, and getting 4 touchdowns and basically the equivalent of a half is just, that's jaw-dropping in Seattle. I dare say that's never happened. So, I would love to see this guy get the MVP, especially, the injury history, what he's played through, and really just some crappy teams he's played on. It's nice that it's turning around for him and that franchise. And just, boy, my fantasy team may be down and out of it completely, but it certainly was no fault of one Todd Gurley. I'll say that.
Well, and I mean, you want to look at the box score a little bit deeper for this game in that the Rams, 352 to 149 edge in yards. So 352 yards doesn't really translate to 42 points, especially with just 5.2 yards per play. But they did really pack this thing away in the second half. And as I mentioned, took Gurley out of the game, kept Jared Goff out of trouble, that type of thing. So the Rams could have really kept going here if they wanted to. Obviously not any incentive for them to do that because they have bigger things to worry about here as we move forward. And, Joe, I guess the last question I would ask you here for today's show is, this Rams team here. I mean, Sean McVay is dialing it up, but, have we seen Jared Goff really go out and win a game yet? I mean, has Jared Goff really put himself, in a position where he's taken that next step? He's had a very good season. A lot of it has to do with the offensive balance that the Rams have. Titans and 49ers here the next 2 weeks. Titans reeling a little bit from that loss and maybe something of a disconnect there between the offensive players and the offensive coordinators. So interesting spot for them going to Nashville. Should beat the 49ers in Week 17 at home if they need to. Does Goff still have to prove something here before you buy in for the postseason?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, just because of the team around him, I would not argue, though. That's something that I don't know that he's actually gone out there and really. The reason they won was just Goff's fine performance. It's always been just the offense, the clock control, and the defense setting the tone. But still, the whole team around him is what I'm still have a really good confidence betting, and they just keep him out of those situations. But I still think, they're down 7. You could have a lot worse options than Goff, and then just this whole wide receiving core he's throwing to, I don't even think a lot of people give enough credit to what Robert Woods has turned himself into and how well they've played without him. And then Sammy Watkins, it's finally putting together. I mean, this guy, over Odell Beckham, over Mike Evans, this was the first wide receiver drafted. So I think this wide receiver core is just oozing with talent. And Les Snead, right now deserves to be banging his chest a little bit for putting this kind of thing together. So I think just with that supporting cast Goff's got around him, as long as Whitworth's healthy at that left tackle, Havenstein, they've just got a good mix up front. And yeah, it's a team I'm just not afraid to bet on, regardless of Goff's inexperience. But yeah, if things do get dicey, I'm sure they could lose a close game, but they are just a strong team. And I think another team that falls in that category, if you're a postseason franchise going into it and your first matchup is in Los Angeles, you're not liking that look necessarily.
Joe Everett from NFL Draft Bible. What's going on over at the Bible right now, Joe?
Daily scouting reports. Still got one. I think we've got it loaded up basically until March. John Blair, the Inside the War Room series, and we're getting our schedule straightened away for the All-Star. We will have a representative at every event, NFLPA, especially at the Shrine Game. Mr. Christian Shanafelt's going down to Florida, and then I, of course, will be down in the Senior Bowl, down in Mobile this year again in January. So, yeah, just getting the reservations checked off, watching the list, and we've, of course, got those watch lists, too. So, yeah, it's all hustling and bustling at NFLDraftBible.com.
And you can follow Joe on Twitter at Joe W. Everett and then at NFL Draft Bible. Joe, appreciate your time as always, man. Thank you so much for joining us here this week, and we'll talk to you again actually in 2 weeks' time because next week is Christmas. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you and yours, and we'll talk to you here in a couple weeks.
All right. That sounds good, Adam.